Hello, everyone, and welcome to the All Creatures Podcast. I'm Angie, and today we're going to be talking about the largest species of cat, and of course, one of the most iconic animals on the planet. I'm really excited today to have Sunarto with me. And Sunarto is a tiger expert that works at the World Wildlife Fund in Indonesia. He has his PhD in wildlife sciences, and he's a biologist working with wildlife and landscape ecology. His specialty is working with and conserving the Sumatran tiger. He works on how the tiger is distributed, its ecology, where it likes to live and how it moves, and of course, how best to conserve them. And Sunarto has been working in tiger research in central Sumatra for years. He's authored several peer-reviewed scientific articles about the Sumatran tiger, and he's also the co-founder of the Sumatran Tiger Conservation Forum. So I'm so excited today to have Sunarto with me. Hello, Sunarto. Are you there? Can you hear me?
Yes. Hello, Angie. How are you? It's really good to finally we can talk today.
I know. So, yeah, Sunarto and I have been working together for a little bit before this interview to try to get connected because he is currently in Java, in Indonesia, part of Indonesia. And the internet connection is great and really fast there. We just had a few little hiccups with my recording software, but we worked through it, and now we're like old best friends. So we're gonna have a lot of fun today. I've been
That's
waiting
amazing.
patiently, like a little.
Yeah, problems sometimes connect us. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. But I've been dying to talk about tigers, and having an expert like you on our podcast is just such a treasure. And we've talked about lions before on the podcast, but you're our first big cat expert, and I just cannot wait to dive into learn. I'm doing this more for myself so I can learn more about the tiger. So Sunarto, I always like to ask my guests just to tell us a little bit about yourself. What is your background so our audience can get to know you?
Well, my background, I was born in Central Java. The island of Java also used to have tigers. Even Bali used to have a different subspecies of tigers. But unfortunately, when I was born, the tiger was exactly at the time that is probably worse than much worse apparently than the condition in Sumatra now. So the tiger went extinct just few years after I was born. So maybe when I was born, there were still actually tiger there. And then I moved from a place there where I was born. There was in the kind of like rural areas to a big city of Jakarta. It's like the capital of Indonesia that has like probably about 10 million of people at that time. So I lived there. I moved from that childhood green places to hustle bustle city.
The big city, yeah.
Yes. So I kind of like missed that moment of my childhood that always surrounded by greeneries, some little wild places and so on. So when I about ready to go to university, the first thing that I've been thinking is that I want to live and work in places that has such a like green and wild that I can enjoy. So that's when I decided to study biology as my major. So I went to University of Indonesia, which is in Jakarta. Well, actually, it has a campus also in Depok, which is not far from Jakarta, but less than 1 hour with either train or bus or car, if you like to drive. Then I studied biology. I finished my first degree. The first degree here takes about 6 years to finish, which is like the normal length of study. That include also fieldwork. Actually, I need to write kind of like dissertation, but a simple version, a bit different from
Okay,
the system in the US. Yeah,
cool.
yeah. So
Yeah, it sounds
I studied bird at that time in different island in Sulawesi.
okay.
Yeah, Sulawesi, by the way, is it's another amazing place in Indonesia. As a biologist, I think I at that time had a dream. Either I have to go to either Galapagos or Sulawesi, which both are
Okay.
equally amazing. This is the place. I mean, Sulawesi is the place where Wallace actually visited. I don't know if you're familiar with Wallace, but at the same era, actually, Wallace and Darwin actually went to different places, and then both actually independently kind of like found the theory of evolution. So this is really amazing place. And
Wow.
then
It's
I
definitely on
worked
my
for quite a
yeah.
bit.
Hmm.
Yeah, I worked for quite a bit, and then I studied. I took my master in the UK, studying forest fire, and then work again on orangutan. And then I went back to university, this time to the US for my PhD. And that's when I started studying tigers in 2004. That's a little bit of my background. Sorry, a bit
Wow,
long.
oh, are you kidding me? I want to go into all the different studies you did, including your honors thesis. But, uh, no, but I think that it's really important because it's to me it's always fascinating and to our listeners about how people evolve to end up in what I would consider like a dream conservation job. And so and quite clearly there's lots of different paths to get there. And so did you always know that you wanted to work with tigers per se, or was it more just nature?
Not really, actually. To be honest, tiger only came like few years after oh, after my master finished. So previously,
Hmm.
basically, my intention was very simple, as I mentioned earlier. I just want to be able to travel to places that is still wild, uh,
Right.
and enjoy rural areas and so on. That is still green. Uh, but then I think it was really good for me that naturally I got the opportunity to study different aspects of the nature. Started with birds, and then I feel like I need to also understand the vegetation. So I studied vegetations. What is it called? Like the effect of
Ecology and
yeah, the ecology of the tropical forest,
hmm
especially related to fire. Actually, it was kind of like accident at that time in '97. There was a big forest fire because of this El Nino. Then I thought like, oh, this is a good opportunity for me to learn about forest dynamics. And then after
uh,
that, I also involved in various conservation effort and surveys on large mammal and birds. And I think it was a perfect time for me to start studying tiger. And understanding tiger require the understanding of a very complex ecosystem, because tiger is the apex predators that you cannot just, I mean, well, you can, but I think it will be easier if you understand the other aspect of the ecology, like the prey, and then what the prey eats, the plants, and where the plant grows, the land, the soil, the geology, all of those aspects relate to tiger. So you will have much better understanding and easier to comprehend uh, of the tiger ecology if we understand the component that form the ecosystem in which the tiger live.
absolutely. It's a very yeah, it's a circle of life. It's a very complex and everything, even though it might not seem, but everything from, like you said, the apex predator being the tiger, to the grasses, to the trees, to the birds, to the microbes in the soil are all interconnected somehow. And if, as biologists, if you don't understand the individual parts, it's hard to understand the whole thing, I think. So yeah, and now with that being said, how did you specifically get involved with the World Wildlife Fund and their conservation efforts to save the tiger?
Yeah, initially I worked with another organization for several years. Even my master thesis was supported at that time by Wildlife Conservation Society,
Mm-hmm.
and then I also work with Conservation International. So I've tried a few of these big international NGOs
Mm-hmm.
and studying and conserving different aspects of the wildlife. Uh, After finishing my master and working further for the orangutan at that time, from 2001 to 2003, and then I was starting to look for different opportunity, especially to go to study. At that time, WWF offered this opportunity uh, in collaboration with Virginia Tech.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, an alumni created this scheme very nicely, so I applied for that. And then I
Wonderful.
got the chance also because I went to a conference in the US, so I visited the campus. It looks nice and talked to the people, and I got accepted also. So I started that work, which is part of the WWF project in collaboration with Virginia Tech. So it's a really nice setting that I went to, and then I finished my study and fieldwork in 2011. And then after
Wow.
that, I come back to WWF, actually continuing and following up my own recommendation of the dissertation. From the findings of the tiger study that we have, we identified several priority places that need to be managed in a better way. So that
Mm-hmm.
is what I'm still working on with my team in Sumatra at the moment.
Wonderful. And now to familiarize our listeners a little bit with tigers, can you briefly describe, you work with a Sumatran tiger, but can you describe a little
Yes.
bit of the different subspecies of tigers and where they live?
Yes, sure. As I mentioned, Sumatran is only one out of either eight or nine, depending on which taxonomy you use,
Okay.
of subspecies of tigers.
Mm-hmm.
So we used to have three different subspecies of tigers in Indonesia that include
Wow.
the Sumatran, the Javan, and the Bali tigers. And the rest are the mainland tigers that is considered to have different subspecies from the Malayan tiger in Malaysia, and then Indo-Chinese, and then southern China, and then Amur in Russia, and some part of China. And there is also extinct one, the Caspian tiger in Middle East.
Mm-hmm.
And then for sure the biggest population is the Indian tiger, the Panthera tigris. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, but recently there is this study that actually clump all of the subspecies on the mainland to be considered as one subspecies,
Mm-hmm.
and Sumatran remain to be the most unique
Oh,
type of
wow.
species. Even consider some publication even consider Sumatra should be considered as a different species because it
Wow.
has been separated for so long
Mm-hmm.
from the population in the mainland. It's isolated by this Malacca Strait,
Mm-hmm.
the ocean. So it has somehow evolved, genetically adapted to this kind of living on the uh, island and also on the equator, which is quite different from the other places in the mainland.
Wow. Wow. Okay, that's incredible. And since you've worked in the field researching tigers for so long,
Mhm.
do you have a memorable moment or an encounter with a tiger that you'd like to share?
Well, every encounter with tiger is always memorable, apparently, and unfortunately, it's not that many yet. Despite my work for no, it's already 14 years. Well, I'm not always in the forest,
Hmm.
but I only saw the tiger twice, and the entire team have only saw the tiger less than 5 times.
Wow.
But we believe that the tigers saw us more often than we do, especially in Sumatra. It's really hard to see tigers because the vegetation is very dense, and the tiger has, we believe, basically evolved by avoiding human, because
Hmm.
the tiger is in some places has been considered a threat. So I think that the individuals that are not afraid of human, they're selected basically from the population as not passing their gene.
Hmm.
So that's how the tiger actually adapted and evolved in Sumatra.
Wow. And with the Sumatran tiger, what is I know it's critically endangered and it's been critically endangered for a long time, but what is the estimated population of the Sumatran tiger?
Uh, Population estimate is a very simple question and always asked over and over again. But actually, to to explain it in a to make people really understand, sometimes it takes sometimes, yeah, it's not like really straightforward at the moment. Like the easiest answer that I can give you is by quoting this most recent analysis, which is around
Hmm.
600 individuals. But the figure, the confidence interval basically range from as low as 300, can be as high as 1200. So the range is so huge. I mean, if you use the lower confidence limit, which is also likely, because we don't know the actual condition in many places. Surveying tiger is really expensive thing. It takes weeks sometimes to just place one camera in the remote area, and you need, to get a precise estimate, you need to sample as many as possible. And getting sample of tigers, especially in Sumatra, I calculated my study. I compared to one study in central India, for example. It takes more than 50 times of effort to get the same number of image of tiger, for example. So that's how hard it is actually to get really a precise estimate of the tiger population. That's why like the figure has been, you know, quite wide in terms of the confidence interval.
And now tigers all across Asia have a lot of pressures with habitat and poaching and climate change. But more specifically, with a Sumatran tiger, what why is its population so low and what are the current pressures that it's facing?
To begin with, as an apex predator, tigers will or usually live in a low density because it requires a large amount of prey, uh, and not just any prey. Tigers, as an ambush predators, they require prey that are large enough, so it's actually worth it for the tigers to hunt. And in average, it has been calculated that it takes about 500 uh, prey as the size of deer to sustain one population of tiger in one area. That's why, like, if an area is not big enough to accommodate tigers, then it cannot sustain the tiger, and that's what caused the density. It's quite low in Sumatra, uh, and also in many other places, depending on the prey. But the tiger also uh, receive, in addition, many pressures from the habitat conversion, for example. They also heavily poached because many people still believe that tiger parts can actually be used for many purposes, like as traditional medicines, as a tools for magic, so many different kinds. Sometimes also as a pride, people still keep the stuffed animals in their house and so on. Although it is illegal actually to do that, but some people still doing it anyway. Some people also want to keep the cubs. So those kind of things that actually lead to the tigers to become very very threatened. And also occasionally in some places, tigers involved in conflict with human. This relate to the perceptions oftentimes of the people around it, especially at the moment the movement of people from different places. Even people who not used to live in tiger habitat, they now live next to the tiger habitat, cutting forests, converting it to plantation, and so on. So the conflict has been escalating also in some places that give further pressures to the tiger. So basically, there are three main threats to tigers, which is the habitat loss and degradation and fragmentation, and then second, the poaching, and last is the conflict with human. And recently, the past 10 years, we have experienced a massive increase in poaching, and we believe that is now actually uh, the biggest threat to tigers, especially in Sumatra.
Wow. But in Sumatra, they're legally protected, right? Poaching's obviously illegal.
Yes, yes, it is. Their tigers are legally protected in Indonesia. Unfortunately, though, the other subspecies are not protected. That's something that we've been trying to propose also to the government, because unless you protect all subspecies of tiger, it will be difficult to enforce the law. Sometimes people can say that, oh, this is not Sumatran tiger. Uh,
Right.
so I think it will be much simpler if we can revise the law to protect all tigers, because all are endangered anyway.
Right.
Sumatran is
Yeah.
even critically endangered. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the things that we also work on. In addition to study on the ground, we also need to work on the policy, to work on the legal protections and so on. So many other works that we need to do also in addition to study.
And yes, Sunarto, that actually leads into my next question. What, with your work to conserve the tiger at WWF, what does an average day look like for you when you're in the field looking for tigers? You mentioned you use camera traps, and you'd mentioned that you do a lot of hiking. So if you could maybe just describe what it looks like when you're out there looking for tigers.
Sure. Basically, my daily work depend on where I am. Basically, probably I can divide into three different categories of my activity. One is when I'm in the field doing the study and monitoring the tigers. Second is when I coordinate with the stakeholders, the partners, basically some meetings. And third is when I'm in the office.
With
And
me,
the
talking with
with
me.
you. No, I think this is I consider the second, like coordination and
Ah,
awareness,
yes.
outreach. I
Okay.
think yeah. So uh, when I first started my tiger work, actually I spent most of my time in the field with my team, training the team, also setting up camera trap, testing this method, testing that method, especially when I did my PhD. But then the past few years, I've been required a lot to coordinate with the government, coordinate with partners. That is exactly what are needed to conserve tiger. You just cannot keep on studying and not communicating your result of your study, and also developing awareness, promoting awareness, and engaging is really important. Engaging everyone basically. Tiger conservation requires the support from everybody, from the government, from the corporate, from anyone. So I got to spend quite a bit of time also on that. That has been like my uh, you know combination of works that I've been doing so far.
And you mentioned that the resources to study these Sumatran tigers is takes a lot more time and energy as compared to maybe studying the different subspecies in India. Is this because of the remoteness of the location and the denseness of the forest? Because you told me, you mentioned that you might have to hike for like a week or two to find a camera trap.
Yeah. Yes, I have visited quite a bit of places across Asia in tiger range countries, including like Russia, India, Malaysia, Thailand, and yes, Sumatra is quite different in that our forests, especially the one that remains now, are mainly in the hilly areas. There are still some in the lowland, but not that many. And the infrastructure until the past few years still very limited. Yeah. So most of the tiger habitat in Sumatra are not accessible by road. Although there are some road that cross the national park in few places, but there is relatively few compared to like the park in, for example, India, that you can do safari in many places. People set up camera traps by using vehicle and then walk maybe 1 or 2 days. But in our place in Sumatra, there are few places that you can. Yeah, it takes even like 1 or 2 weeks just to reach the place, and there are even some places that we can never reach until now because of the this constraint. Probably we need to have like helicopters to drop us and so on,
Wow.
or special techniques of expedition basically
Yeah.
to be
So
able to
that's, I
reach those
mean,
places with
that's
the
huge
equipment that
commitment
we
to,
have. And yeah,
yeah, to walk for a week or two just to check a camera trap is pretty incredible. But the
yeah.
camera traps are obviously a huge resource for you to know how the animals are moving.
Yeah, exactly. Camera trap provide us really nice tools to understand tiger. So actually, our understanding on tiger has improved very significantly since the use of camera traps, and the technique have been developing very rapidly. And yeah, we keep on exploring and try to always follow the development on the use of this technique. And the great thing also about camera trap is that you are able to record the image and even the sound of the animals, that has been extremely useful to use as a communication materials. That is one thing also that we've been spending quite a bit of our time to share these stories, videos of the camera, and we really love it that we get really nice response from the public. Compared to, for example, well, of course, we also write papers, but only few people can understand if you only rely on writing papers. So
Yes.
we have to combine both.
Well, even me, I could access the papers, but I like to watch the camera traps better. It's a little bit more interactive. You can really see the size and all of that. And you mentioned that the tigers, when you're out hiking for days in the national parks in central Sumatra, and it really paints an incredible visual as how green and, like you
Mm.
said, the upper altitudes of it. It's not in the lowlands and very dense forests. But are all the Sumatran tigers inside a national park, or are some outside national parks just on like rangeland
Yeah.
or private property?
There are still quite big portions that are outside of national park. Actually, that remains unprotected.
Okay.
So we categorize our forest area into different status in terms of the management. So there are conservation areas like national park, nature reserve, wildlife reserve.
Hmm.
Outside of that, there is a protection forest that basically protected mainly for keeping the watershed secure. But the biggest chunk of the forest in Indonesia, or forest land in Indonesia, are actually production forests, and this belongs to or managed by concession for many different purposes. Some are uh, production of the natural timber. Basically, you do some selective cutting, but others basically are clear cut and to be planted with uh, totally different kind of trees, like acacia, for example, for
Okay.
pulp and paper.
Mm.
Yeah. So and the tiger can occasionally still use those kind of areas. That is exactly my study was about. Try to explore how actually tigers survive, if they do, in these different kinds of land cover types across Sumatra. And then one of the recommendation is that actually even areas outside of protected area, like outside of national park, occasionally can still be used by tigers. That's why uh, engaging this concession, these private companies, businessmen are also very, very important if we want to save tigers, in addition to saving the core area, which is the conservation areas like national parks and
Right.
wildlife reserve.
Yes. And so, I mean, that's why I just love the work by the World Wildlife Fund. Not only do they work to, of course, conserve the species, which is important, and understand its population dynamics, but you also do a lot of work to conserve their habitat and to figure out how to work with, like you said, the landowners and the private entities
Yeah,
that are,
yeah.
that where the tigers inhabit outside of the protected parks. And so
Yes,
what
and we in fact develop after communicating with these business sectors, we identified the gap, the understanding from the business sector at that time was not at that level that we need to convince them and also provide them with some guidance. And one of my publication with my colleague is that this guideline for private sectors on how they can actually contribute in tiger conservation, in managing their land and beyond, not just directly managing the habitat, but business sector can actually contribute a lot in conserving tigers.
right.
For example, like providing funding if they're not operating within tiger habitat. So
Hmm.
there are many things that they can actually contribute also.
And how is your team in the World Wildlife Fund? How are they working, or what are some of the solutions to help reduce tiger human conflicts?
Yeah. Uh, I probably should first mention that I work with several different types of teams. Okay, and on the ground we have these tiger monitoring teams that basically work mainly by using this camera as one of the tools that we use. And we also have protection unit, tiger protection unit, working together closely with the government. Well, every work actually is been coordinated closely with government, but especially this protection, because protection requires authority, special authority, and that belongs to the government. And yeah, we work closely and support the government on that. And also we have the team who address conflict, human wildlife conflict, especially tigers. We also have the team who work on promoting awareness and education. We even have team who engage corporates. We also have team that do partnership. So yeah, I'm quite lucky as the organization. We have quite a number of teams that can actually handle different kind of issues. So related to the human wildlife conflict, especially human tiger conflict, uh, myself and my team have actually been collecting the information on the conflict incidents to try to understand what is the conflict profile, what is the pattern, and so on. Because long time ago, people thinks that you know the solution immediately, but looking at this database that we have collected, I'm convinced that many of these conflict incidents actually could have been prevented, could have been avoided. And I learned that actually understanding of the people, perception of the people is really important. And that's why after looking at this pattern and studying or investigating this database, our focus on human wildlife conflict mitigation was more on the prevention aspect. For sure, we also involved in the response because that's how we learn even further on the details of every conflict incident. But whenever there is no incidents, our team keep on collecting this information and try to develop tools like awareness tools to try to educate people, to try to share with people, and connecting one place to the other to basically like doing shared learning, because oftentimes the knowledge are out there, uh, owned or practiced by the community, by the people who live on the ground. Not we are not we might consider ourselves expert, but the real experts are there on the ground. This
Absolutely. That's a
community
great point.
who
Right.
is
Yeah.
yeah, who live side by side with the tiger. So we got to learn from them instead of we teaching them, right, all the time.
Yeah.
So that's how things happen. Basically, we just facilitate the learning, the exchange to happen, and with that, we believe that we have contributed in the reduction of human tiger conflict in several places, and we hope that we can expand this kind of work. That hopefully in the future there will be no more victims, yeah, no more casualties of conflict. A negative interaction might still happen, but we just need to manage it.
Right.
So conflict has to be managed, and it is actually manageable.
Absolutely. Well, and then as each generation that you work with and work alongside, the next generation coming up, that'll be more ingrained in
Yeah.
as far to reduce conflict as well. So that's really amazing work. And what are some of the solutions that your team has to help reduce tiger poaching?
To address tiger poaching, similarly, we also uh, first try to understand what actually the driver of the poaching,
Mm-hmm.
right? How the poaching is being operated, the network of the poaching. So poaching are driven by demand, and demand oftentimes come from big cities like where I live now, or in Jakarta, or even maybe in other countries, right? And then this involves oftentimes like corrupted official, uh, or even like people who just want to make money, or people who doesn't want to enforce the law,
Mm-hmm.
various things, and or local people who have no alternative job. They're being approached by people from outside. Can you uh, find a tiger for me, and so on. So uh, we kind of like have a quite good understanding now on how poaching and illegal wildlife trade and demand for tiger part operate, and also prey part. I mean, the prey animals also, because tigers are threatened not only because of the directly they're being directly poached or hunted, but also the hunting of the prey. The prey availability being depleted is also another issue.
Right.
So we try to uh, we implemented what we call an integrated tiger protection. So we have three prong for that. So first is we maximize and try to improve the effectiveness of the patrolling of the tiger in their habitat. That's the first thing in the core area.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of that, we deals with the traders. So we basically want to break the chains of illegal wildlife trade that typically happen from nearest village of the tiger habitat all the way to the big cities, the airport, seaport, different countries, and so on. Okay. And the third is to address the demand also. We do a lot of behavior change campaign,
Okay.
engagement, and so on. So those three things that we try to implement in an integrated manner. Otherwise, if you only work on one, you cannot address the poaching. You have to you work together with many different partners and make it in synergy. That's we believe how poaching can be addressed. And as I mentioned earlier, also policy is also very important, and policy related to all of this. And the commitment from the government is really important. That's why we work closely with the government, trying to support them with any way we can to strengthen the protection. We work with not just talking about law actually when we talk about protection of tigers. We also work with even religious leaders in Indonesia. Uh, they're believing, I mean, like faith based is really important in determining people
Hmm.
action. That's why we've been working together with religious leaders, with community leaders, to also uh, promote the awareness and the behavior change toward supporting tigers.
Well, and I think for a lot of our listeners that are animal enthusiasts or animal lovers, and obviously you being a wildlife biologist and conservationist, of course, saving the tiger, the Sumatran tiger, is what we need to do. Like, it's not even a question. And clearly, the World Wildlife Fund is engaged, your team and your staff, the World Wildlife Fund is engaged in so many different efforts, like trying to figure out tiger biology and ecology, where they live, how they move, how many of them they are, to how to prevent habitat loss, to how to stop poaching, to how to help educate the locals and reduce the human tiger conflict. But for the naysayers out there, or for people that maybe just don't love the tiger the way that we do, so Sunarto, why should we save the tiger? And how do you get people excited about tiger conservation in Sumatra that maybe wouldn't because they're having either conflict or they don't know a lot about tigers?
Yep, that is a question that I've been asked over and over again. Also, when we deal with conflict, for example, there oftentimes come this question like, which one is more important? Is it human or tigers? Yeah, unfortunately, there are still many people who don't see the relation between tigers, between nature and our
Mm-hmm.
life. Uh, Saving tiger actually is not just talking about saving the animal per se. For sure, tiger by itself is an amazing animal that I think it deserves to be conserved. But beyond that, there is this saying that saving tigers, saving so much more. Uh, Tiger is just, in this case, an indication or what is it called? Like it's a surrogate of the nature that we really depend very badly on. If the life support system, which is forests and water that we depend on, actually where the tiger live in the case of Sumatra. So by saving tiger, you actually save this life support system. And talking about Sumatra, maybe people in the US will feel like, oh, Sumatra is too far. Why do we care? But you know, our life is now is really totally connected. Everything that we consume at the moment is very likely coming from somewhere else. I believe like many products in the US also come from Sumatra, and the other way around. Things that we use here also some coming from the US. So that kind of thing, like we cannot separate anymore uh, our life from the nature, and we really even more increasingly depend on the nature. And saving tiger actually is about saving nature that we really depend on.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head exactly. I mean, saving the tiger is saving so much more. It's not just about the tiger, it's about everything in nature that surrounds the tiger, and we're all globally connected now. So even though unfortunately I don't have the beautiful highland forests of Sumatra in my backyard, here I sit talking to you halfway across the world, looking at a video, having fun. We're having coffee together and talking about tigers. So we are very,
Hey, your coffee might come from
it
Sumatra
might,
also, right?
exactly. So we are very interconnected, and the tiger is part of that. And so Sunarto, you've been doing tiger conservation for about 14 years, and I'm sure in your career you've had obviously some great successes with your team at World Wildlife Fund and through some of the other conservation organizations that you've had. But I'm sure you've had some setbacks because of poaching and government officials maybe not following through with policy and things like that. So, as a biologist and conservationist, what keeps you motivated each day to keep fighting this good fight for the Sumatran tigers?
Yeah. Well, yeah, a lot of setback actually that I feel like, working in Sumatra in 2004, setting up camera trap, going back to the same spot and find out that the forest where you used to put the camera trap is gone within a month. That is, it's not like a very rare things for me, and it's really, really sad to see that. And uh, even our camera trap, many have been lost also, and we believe by poachers and encroachers that are not happy when we work on this kind of aspect that people might think that this is threatening their livelihood. They don't see the bigger picture. But on the other hand, I'm also quite lucky to be able to have the bigger picture to see that good things are happening in here and there. Even like in very difficult place, just like I just came back from Nepal 3 days ago actually, and this is my third visit. This country is very challenging in terms of the economy might not be as good as Indonesia, but they're doing really, really well in terms of tiger conservation. They can do that with strong commitment from
Mm-hmm.
the government, with the support from community. The community feel like they have the share of the benefit of conserving tigers. So that kind of models, even in Sumatra, we also have to some degree in some smaller areas, smaller spots, smaller cases, some indication of successes that actually give me more motivation, and things can be done actually. What we need, especially in Sumatra at the moment, is actually upscaling of these small successes, small role models to make it bigger, to take up at the right scale. And if that happen, I believe that tiger conservation and tiger recovery, uh, it's not something impossible. It's something that is achievable actually.
Well, and that is hopeful news, and especially for you and your staff that are there on the ground and fighting this good fight every day for the Sumatran tiger or for all tigers, like you said. But what can the average person do that doesn't have interaction with stakeholders and locals or government agencies? What could somebody do here in the U.S. or in the U.K. or in Australia that is, listening to this podcast but maybe doesn't have access to come visit you in Java and Sumatra? Do you have any advice for us?
Sure. As I said earlier, everyone actually can either become the threat to the tiger or contribute to tiger conservation. The choice is yours. The choice is us, or is ours. Yeah. And I can show to anyone the every little things that you can do to help conserve tiger. I think at the moment, this time, most people use social media, and with social media posts, you can help tigers. With social media click, you can help tigers. If you go to groceries by thinking about what you're going to buy, you can save tigers, or you can trap tigers. Uh, it's the choice is actually ours. Yeah, I mean like ours. Um, yeah, so many things that we can do. If you're a student, you can write a story about tiger. You can research on tiger. If you're a journalist, you can write about tigers. If you're a businessman, you can contribute. If you're rich, you can contribute with your money to help support tiger protection on the ground. anyone can do something uh, for tigers, and actually doing something for tigers is doing something good for ourselves also, as I said earlier.
Absolutely. Yes. And now for the listeners that are interested and would like to learn more about your research with tigers and the incredible work you do at the World Wildlife Fund to help conserve and protect them, how can people learn more about tigers and your work?
The easiest way is just follow our social media. Probably we use Facebook, we use Twitter, we use Instagram. We also have websites. If you Google WWF, WWF, basically you can also see many different
Mm-hmm.
WWF offices in Indonesia. Our website is
Okay.
www.id, uh, and you can also use the social media to find me or find the organization.
Wonderful. Yes. Well, we'll put some links on our
Yeah,
show notes too for
it's
our
so easy
listeners,
to follow.
so we can have more tiger fans, tiger followers, which was always good.
That would be
Yes,
awesome. We
yes. Like
get
you
more
said,
support.
just
Yeah, yeah,
people probably before listening to this podcast maybe didn't know that there's 8 or 9 subspecies of tigers, or that the Sumatran tiger is critically endangered with numbers. We don't know the specific numbers, but very low
yeah,
in the
yeah. And that they
and
can
they
be
can
safe also.
and they
And
can
they
be
can be
recovered.
recovered
And there's
also.
already great people on the ground working their tails off, literally hiking for a week or two in the jungles.
We also having a lot of fun though that I didn't mention
Yeah,
much
oh,
yet.
I'm sure.
Maybe for some of you who are interested and have the time, you can also visit us, join our team on the
Well,
ground. That would be
that's
fun.
what's going to actually lead into my next question is, so for us, if there are any students or volunteers or people that have an interest in animal conservation or tiger conservation, or if some of the listeners out there have lots of money and are able to travel to
Mm.
Sumatra to see tigers or learn more about them, what advice do you have? What's the
I cannot promise to see
Well,
tigers in
definitely, yeah, because you've
Sumatra
only seen them a
unless you
couple times,
spend.
right? Yes, but you can at least
But
visit. There, I'm sure, of course, Sumatra is very
yeah,
diverse with other wildlife there, as is Java and Indonesia in general. So,
yes,
any advice for any
yes,
budding
yeah.
young scientists or zookeepers or animal conservationists?
Mhm. Yeah, you can explore again through our website and social media and see different kinds of activities that we do. And then, if you're interested in one of those, or even if you have ideas on things that we might not put up there yet, you can suggest it, and then you can ask us and see if we can arrange something together to do something on the ground for the tigers.
Absolutely. Well, and definitely, Sunarto, I will be staying in touch with you and wanting to continue this journey and these conversations about tigers and hearing amazing stories about your travels and where you're going, and also hopefully learning about more exciting news about how people are coming together to save the tigers and saving so much more. So I want to sincerely thank you for your time and putting up with my technical difficulties earlier before the interview. But it was awesome. We got to know each other better and became fast friends.
Yes.
And yeah, it's just been such a pleasure learning about you and about your journey to help save the Sumatran tiger and all tigers for that matter, because they all need our help. It's not just the Sumatran tiger as well. And so, for our listeners, if you want to learn more about Sunarto and his work, check out our show notes on our webpage. Just Google All Creatures Podcast and you'll find us there. And yes, save a tiger, vote with your dollar. A lot of choices you make on social media or at the grocery store will help protect the tiger and help save them. So, thank you very much for listening. And thank you, Sunarto. Let's stay in touch, though, my new friend.
Thank you so much. Yes, sure. Let's stay in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you, Angie.